Hey, welcome everyone. My name's Eloisa Ramos, and I am here with my friends and my daughter. Hi, Sonia. Hello, Connie. Hi,
Hi.
Teresa.
There.
And we are studying the text of A Course in Miracles. Today we are going to read from chapter 7, The Gifts of the Kingdom, and it's section 8, The Unbelievable Belief. Okay. Okay. Paragraph 1. We have said that without projection, there can be no anger. But it is also true that without extension, there can be no love. These reflect a fundamental law of the mind, and therefore one that always operates. It is the law by which you create and were created. It is the law that unifies the kingdom and keeps it in the mind of God. To the ego, the law is perceived as a means of getting rid of something it does not want. To the Holy Spirit, it is the fundamental law of sharing, by which you give what you value in order to keep it in your mind. To the Holy Spirit, it is the law of extension. To the ego, it is the law of deprivation. It therefore produces abundance or scarcity, depending on how you choose to apply it. This choice is up to you, but it is not up to you to decide whether or not you will utilize the law. Every mind must project or extend, because that is how it lives, and every mind is life. Okay. Okay, so this is making things very clear between projection and extension. So, um, so what it's saying is that without projection, there can be no anger. Okay, because anger comes from the belief in scarcity, that there's not enough, and therefore, um, I have to take from you, or you have to take from me. It's about survival. Um, and so it involves attack. And so there's going to be anger. Okay. There's going to be the belief um, that um, there's going to be a belief in territory, basically. Um, and I have to protect my territory against loss because I'm going to believe in gain and loss. Um, because projection is basically the use of this fundamental law of mind, um, which is misused by the ego in projection, but the Holy Spirit teaches us how to use it to extend love. Um, because that's basically what life is. So life for the mind is to create. For the ego, it's to miscreate. Um, and so both of these is a reflection, even the ego thought system from that, way of looking at projection is that it's still reflecting the fundamental law of the mind, um, which is giving is receiving. Um, and so this is how God creates. He gave of himself, herself, its divine nature. He gave of its divine nature to us, the created. So we are divine in nature. Um, and let's see, and it is the law that unifies the kingdom. and keeps it in the mind of God. So what it says is that that God cannot lose what he creates. So we cannot separate ourselves from God. That's not possible. If God is the mind with a capital M here, then the thoughts of God, which would be his creations, us, cannot leave that mind, because there's no sense of loss. It's a sharing. It's not a getting rid of, like the projection. Um, but to the ego, that's how it uses this law. It perceives it as a means of getting rid of something that it does not want, mainly guilt. Okay, because once we believe in the ego, we're believing that the impossible is possible and that we did separate ourselves from God and we are no longer um, in the mind of God, and that now we are a separate ego body. And now we're going to believe we are living in a world of scarcity where you have to, you know, sacrifice to get, or you have to exchange, or you have to take from others to gain at their loss. So let's see. But to the Holy Spirit, the law of sharing is, we read that one law of the gifts of the kingdom or the Holy Spirit that said to have, give all to all. So this is just what this is saying here in line 6, by which you give what you value in order to keep it in your mind. And to the ego, projection is a way of getting rid of something, but it's really repression. So what happens is that we don't actually get rid of it. What we do is we split the mind, and then we make a world that's separate from us, on which we project all the stuff we don't want, which is really the unconscious mind. It's really a reflection of our unconscious mind. So we actually don't get rid of it. It's just repressed in our unconscious mind, which projects it. And that's why we see it in the world. But to the ego, it's a law of deprivation. And so therefore we can look out at the world and believe, oh, geez, I I can compare myself and believe that there's inequality, because I can say, oh, well, look at my house. It's so small compared to that mansion over there, Hollywood mansion, or something like that. And so it's not that I am deprived because I still have a house. It's just that it's small. So then in the comparison, I believe that because someone has more, that they have then taken it from me. And that's what the inequality means, is that we have lost equality. And if we lose equality, from the point of view of the ego, it's you shift resources from one side to the other, and now there's imbalance. Okay, so but look at number 9. It therefore produces abundance or scarcity, depending on how you choose to apply it. And I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in the topic of abundance and scarcity, and it's right here. It's very simply to take guidance from the Holy Spirit so that we can practice sharing love, which is extension, which is abundance, which is everything, which is giving is receiving. So let's see. Okay, so it's every mind must project or extend. Okay, so it's just a decision. Yeah, Connie?
So I have an example of this. Just last night, Chris was saying that uh, after our 3 cats moved on and we were in the process of adopting 2 new ones, he said he was wondering if he was going to feel guilty about that. And I think he did for a little bit until he realized that, well, no, it's just love. I just have this abundance of love to give, and it's just by doing that, it's extending. And
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of, yeah, it was like that was a really cool thing to just kind of be with that. And it just reminds me so much of this paragraph when we choose to know that our heart, I mean, we just have so much there that it's an abundance of love we have. Otherwise, we are in that scarcity mode. Oh, yeah, I don't have enough. I don't have enough to give, or yeah. Anyway, it was a fun conversation we had last night about it.
Oh, good, 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 Connie.
Yeah.
Yes, because I think that realization is recognizing that the love comes within, the source of love is within. Um,
Mm,
and I think when we're in scarcity, we believe that the source of, what we lack is separate or outside of us. And so
mm-hmm.
we are always trying to get it from, the world, from somebody else, from because we're needy and we are trying to get it from outside of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because we're seeing ourselves as separate, ego, body. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, paragraph 2.
Yeah, thank you. I really like that example, Connie. Okay. The ego's use of projection must be fully understood before the inevitable association between projection and anger can be finally undone. The ego always tries to preserve conflict. It is very ingenious in devising ways that seem to diminish conflict because it does not want you to find conflict so intolerable that you will insist on giving it up. The ego, therefore, tries to persuade you that it can free you of conflict, lest you give the ego up and free yourself. Using its own warped version of the laws of God, the ego utilizes the power of the mind only to defeat the mind's real purpose. It projects conflict from your mind to other minds in an attempt to persuade you that you have gotten rid of the problem.
Gotten rid of the problem. And what problem would that be? There's only one problem.
From the
Separation.
separation.
Yes, the ego itself. Uh, yeah, so the ego's use of projection. Okay, so the ego uses projection. Um, let's see, to divide, because that's what it is. It's a belief in separation, and it needs, without division, we would not perceive separation. We would realize, oh, it's not real. Okay. Um, so, uh, so it wants, let's see, um, so what we need to be looking at is this association, um, that when we project, we're going to be making an association um, with anger. So in other words, whenever we're angry, we're projecting because anger is justified attack. Okay, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So um, there's a sense of, let's see, if you remember the last time you were angry, um, let's see, I work with a client today who was working through that. She was really angry at herself. Um, and let's see. And underneath it was the scarcity piece. So 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 it's a belief that there can be profit and that there can be loss. And that's what justifies the anger because it's saying, oh, I took a loss and therefore I missed out on a gain. And that's somebody's fault, you know. That's a loss to myself, to my self-esteem, or to my to my bank account, or to my reputation, to whatever it is, to my feeling like I have companionship. Maybe I lose a friend or something, you know. So there's so the idea of loss, which comes from projection, because remember, when I project, I have judged something and I'm trying to get rid of it because I've judged it not good enough in some way. So that's a loss, but I don't consider it a loss because I think that it has no value to me. Um, because I'm making a judgment between what has value and what has not value, what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I separate things, I label them, and I put this judgment right in the middle. And I'm going to like the stuff on this side and I'm going to dislike the stuff on this side. So I'm going to have maybe, what's the word? I'm going to give preference to this side and I'm going to discriminate this side. Or I'm going to be treating the sides differently. Okay, because I'm going to be giving more attention to this side because it has more value for me. And I'm going to be neglecting this side because it doesn't have as much value. So there's this duality that is made when we project. That's why we say that the ego thought system is dualistic, because it's based on the mind judging what is, um, believing that it knows, and that it has usurped the power of God as a judge. Um, and of course, God is not a judge, but anyway. So let's see. So the ego always tries to preserve conflict because it has to preserve that duality. Um, let's see. However, the ego therefore, let's see, that it can be free you of conflict. Okay. So number 4 is the ego therefore tries to persuade you that it can free you of conflict lest you give the ego up and free yourself. So yes, so this conflict thing, what happens is that when it gets too extreme, we are literally feeling torn apart. It's unbearable. It can be very, very, very distressful. So the ego wants to make sure that it doesn't get to that point, so that we're like, oh my God, no way. I just want to get rid of, I don't care about one side. I don't care about just having it positive. I just don't want to have anything to do with the duality. That's what it's trying to avoid. Um, so then it tries to give us solutions to get out of the conflict without really getting out of the conflict. So it's seeking and not finding. But it keeps us busy enough so that, um, we don't completely decide against it. Uh, okay. And so it tries to say, look, just project this and see it in other people, and then you don't have to feel the problem. So then what it's saying is, look, you can just get rid of the conflict, get rid of the duality, okay? All you have to do is just blame everybody. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else is guilty, and you're always right. It's simple, okay? So the mind becomes very close-minded and it guards that very strongly, because it's following the idea, of the ego. This is how you're going to solve your conflict. Don't look at the error, and let go of the whole problem, Just make yourself perfect in your own eyes and everybody else is imperfect. There. Okay. Paragraph 3.
There are two major errors involved in this attempt. First, strictly speaking, conflict cannot be projected because it cannot be shared. Any attempt to keep part of it and get rid of another part does not really mean anything. Remember that a conflicted teacher is a poor teacher and a poor learner. His lessons are confused, and their transfer value is limited by his confusion. The second error is the idea that you can get rid of something you do not want by giving it away. Giving it is how you keep it. The belief that by seeing it outside, you have excluded it from within is a complete distortion of the power of extension. That is why those who project are vigilant for their own safety. They are afraid that their projections will return and hurt them. Believing they have blotted their projections from their own minds, they also believe their projections are trying to creep back in. Since the projections have not left their minds, they are forced to engage in constant activity in order not to recognize this.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything, Connie, do you want to say with that paragraph?
Well, I think you were just pretty much describing that whole process there. Except the when you get down towards the end, a few, I'll just let you get into that piece as a little bit not
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah. So the last line was very interesting. So when we judge, okay, we only want the positive things that we judge to be seen in us, and all the negative things we want to see them in other people. So we have to really hide and protect those things that we have judged bad and rejected in us. So what we do is we end up throwing a lot of it in the unconscious, repressing it and trying to hide it from others. So we end up having to make a self-image of, oh, I'm such a nice guy. Oh, I'm such a wonderful mother. Okay. And that's the public image. And then in private, all this other crap comes up that we don't want the public to see. So, um, uh, okay. So what happens is that we repress in order to not see that all the stuff that we have rejected, like, oh, I'm a bad mother. Okay, that's a judgment. Okay. But I want to say, well, no, I'm a good mother and all those parents are bad. Okay. But, okay, it's impossible to be a quote unquote perfect parent because there is no such thing. Okay. So when I fail my own expectations, what I do with that is I try to hide it. And it's really hard to hide everything when you keep shoving it down in your unconscious. It's like throwing stuff in the closet and the closet is completely full and the door keeps cracking open and wanting to come out. And so what the mind does is it tries to just keep itself from looking at it by being in constant activity, always being busy, maybe having a job that is just, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week, or whatever. Anything. It's really interesting. It brings up a memory that I have of a story my mother was telling me, that when she was little, her her mother, um, kind of under the instruction of the local priest and stuff, was saying that an idle mind was not good. That 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 if you just sat there doing nothing, in stillness in meditation, that bad thoughts would creep in, that evil thoughts would creep in. So her idea was to always keep her kids busy. So even if when they had nothing to do and they'd finish all their chores, she would dump like it was a little box that measured corn and beans. She would dump a box full of that on the ground, and she would have her kids pick them up just to keep them busy. So she did not want her kids with any quote unquote idle time. Because they were literally afraid of what this is saying in number two, that their projections will, or number 11, believing that they have blotted their projections from their own mind. They also believe their projections are trying to creep back in. So they're actually, so that which is trying to creep back in is what we've repressed, and we look at it as, evil thoughts or bad thoughts, and you got to keep them out. And then you just stay busy, 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 so you don't have time to think and reflect. Um, so anyway, yeah, but this is saying, look, this is an error. Number 6, okay, is that you can get rid of something you do not want by giving it away. No, if you give it away, you're going to keep it. Okay, so the minute that we project blame or we project, a judgment onto someone, we're practicing giving what we have. So we're going to know that we have it, and we have to really, to blot that out, we're going to have to really make an effort to not see it, because it's there. It's in the unconscious mind. So okay, and then the thing about the teaching here. So that's what happens. Parents are basically teachers. And so a conflicted teacher is going to make for a poor teacher and a poor learner. Yes. So generally speaking, we don't make very good parents because we want to teach kids, to behave well, to do well, to be kind, to all of that, but we can't teach by example because we're split. So we tend to say one thing, you know, you know, I don't want you getting in trouble in school. I don't want to hear that you went out in recess and kicked a kid. Okay. But I'm going to reserve the right to smack you when you bad mouth me. Okay. So so it's going to be that double standard that's going to make it very confusing for the child to really learn um what, what do I defend myself? Do I let people disrespect me, because that's, you see what I'm saying? So it gets very confusing to be teaching that way. And of course, to try to learn from someone that's split like that is also very difficult. Okay, number 4.
You cannot perpetuate, excuse me, an illusion about another without perpetuating it about yourself. There is no way out of this because it is impossible to fragment the mind. To fragment is to break into pieces, and mind cannot attack or be attacked. The belief that it can, an error that the ego always makes, underlies its whole use of projection. It does not understand what mind is, and therefore does not understand what you are. Yet its existence is dependent on your mind because the ego is your belief. The ego is a confusion in identification. Never having had a consistent model, it never developed consistently. It is the product of the misapplication of the laws of God by distorted minds that are misusing their power. Sounds like he's slamming parents, right? Or the world, whoever our role models are, teachers, whoever.
Well, yes, and remember that we all teach what we
That is
believe.
true.
Yes, so let's see.
I thought it was interesting that it said the ego is your belief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we made it up.
And then there is confusion in that identification.
There's confusion in that identification because to believe in the ego is to believe in opposition, right? That,
Right.
yes, and therefore to believe in opposites. And once we believe in opposites, we believe in contradiction, which is very confusing because we believe in conflict. Basically, we say one thing, we do another, or we do one thing that's in, contradiction to what we just did. So there's no consistency. Um,
I think the thing that struck me the most is that you cannot perpetuate an illusion without perpetuating it about yourself. It's like even though we project, it's not, we really aren't projecting. Like you said, we're repressing. And when we repress, it's still ours to deal with.
yes,
At some
because
point, on some level, we have to deal with it.
we do because it's still in our mind. So you can think of judgment as making up a story. You know how when you were kids and stuff, and maybe you didn't like someone and you started making stories about them that were not very complimentary to your friends. You start gossiping and, saying stuff about them. Oh, did you see what she was wearing today? Oh, maybe her mother, da, 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 da. Or you just start making stuff up. And uh, be, just because, you don't like the kid or the kid stop being friends with you or whatever. And so that's illusion. We're perpetuating an illusion, a story, something about another person. And once we make it up, um, it stays in our mind because it's a story that is in our imagination. And the judgment stays in our mind. And as soon as we come into the same, as soon as we do the same thing that they did or whatever, we're judging ourselves because the judgment is still there. Uh, so that's why the mind seems to become fragmented. It's because let's see, it's because we think that those judgments have left our mind, and we then perceive them as if they were judging us, as if they were not in our mind. Um, so let's see. Uh, and that's why we think that the mind can attack, that we can attack ourselves. Because, but of course we can't. It's just that, and in judgments, we perceive judgments as attack, but anything that's attacked is not really the true self. It's an image that we have made of ourselves. So someone can say things that are not true about us in judgment, okay? And you will believe some of them and you won't believe some of them. And the ones you believe, those are going to be hurtful and are going to have an effect. And those that you don't believe are not going to have an effect, okay? Because you know that what they're saying is not true. And it's only when you're in agreement with them at an unconscious level that does it produce a reaction. Not because they're the cause, that their words are the cause, and not because it's an attack, but because you are holding the exact same judgment of yourself. And your mind is the cause. because it's because it's because it's a lack of love that we have not forgiven. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Anyway, number 7, the ego is a confusion in identification. So the identification is the idea of who our source is. Are we self-created and therefore a separate self, an ego? Or are we a creation of one source of life, which is God? So it's the confusion. Let's see, because let's see, 6, yet its existence is dependent on your mind because the ego is your belief. So the ego as our belief is the belief that we can make ourselves into anything we believe we are. Okay. And that somehow by believing it, we have self-created ourselves that way. Oh, as my judgment, because I would say, oh, well, I'm a good parent. That's what I am. And you can't say you're a bad parent. You've done dot, 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 dot. Okay. So, uh, so I'm believing that I have changed the equality of our creation by the same source, and that through my belief, I have made myself sinless and you a sinner, you know, or things like that. Okay, number 5. Oh, my turn. Do not be afraid of the ego. It depends on your mind. And as you made it by believing in it, so you can dispel it by withdrawing belief from it. Do not project the responsibility for your belief in it onto anyone else, or you will preserve the belief. When you are willing to accept sole responsibility for the ego's existence, you will have laid aside all anger and all attack, because they come from an attempt to project responsibility for your own errors. But having accepted the errors as yours, you do not, no, having accepted the errors as yours, do not keep them. Give them over quickly to the Holy Spirit to be undone completely, so that all their effects will vanish from your mind and from the sonship as a whole. Okay. Okay, so this is a really important paragraph in healing, because it's basically spelling out the process here. Okay, first, we cannot be afraid. The miracle that brings forth healing of the mind requires that we release all fear, that we be in a place without fear, to be in our right mind. So the first one is do not be afraid of the ego. So we should not be afraid of our beliefs or of the power of our beliefs. And a lot of times we are. Okay. Those beliefs depend on our mind because we made them, and we can unmake them. We can stop believing in them. That's what the Course calls a change in mind or a change in perception, which is what the miracle is. 3, do not project the responsibility for your belief in it onto anyone else, or you will preserve the belief. Yes. So we need to always remember that the cause is in our mind, and it's not out there. It's not someone else making us angry. It's not the food that I ate that's making me sick. So do not project the cause, which is the responsibility, for the power of our beliefs to bring forth these experiences onto anything or anyone else. Or we will hold on to the belief in separation, because we're believing that the cause is separate from our mind. So 4, when you are willing to accept sole responsibility for the ego's existence, you will have laid aside all anger and attack. Yes, because basically, once we accept that responsibility, we cannot be a victim to anyone or anything. the mind is the only causal level. And, if we're unhappy with what is showing up in our lives as the effect, well, we can go right back to the source, our mind, which is our sole responsibility. And so there is no justified attack. Anger and all attack cannot be justified because I'm doing it all to myself. And so let's see. But the only reason why we accept that responsibility for those errors, okay, is not to keep them and then to direct attack on ourselves, but to turn them over quickly to the Holy Spirit to be undone completely. So we look at the error with our right mind when we accept that responsibility, and the Holy Spirit dispels them. They're vanished from our mind and from the chip. So it's important here that they don't just see, so, and their effects too. So give them over quickly to the Holy Spirit to be undone completely so that all their effects will vanish from your mind and also from the sonship as a whole. So the healing is not just from our mind, from our own experience of symptoms, whatever they are. It is literally vanishing it from the sonship, because remember, it's one mind. So it's a blessing. The healing is a blessing to everyone, as one mind. Okay, number 6.
The Holy Spirit will teach you to perceive beyond your belief, because truth is beyond belief and his perception is true. The ego can be completely forgotten at any time because it is a totally incredible belief, and no one can keep a belief he has judged to be unbelievable. The more you learn about the ego, the more you realize that it cannot be believed. The incredible cannot be understood because it is unbelievable. The meaninglessness of perception based on the unbelievable is apparent, but it may not be recognized as being beyond belief because it is made by belief.
Okay, anything, Sonia?
Yeah, I think I need a lot of clarification on the last sentence, but I mean, it actually reminded me what it's saying here of an experience that I had because I was doing the lesson one morning, um, and I had a really I had a really long period of time where there were no thoughts. So in that, oh no, sorry. First, my mind, like there were so many thoughts just going all over the place, just one after the other. So I was having a lot of difficulty trying to do the lesson for the day. And so I was just closing my eyes and sitting there. And then it did occur to me that hey, all of these thoughts are not real. Like it's just a belief. It's my belief in the ego that's making all of these thoughts seemingly real for me. So after I noticed that, it was just quiet. It was just complete, like just silence. And it finally clicked. I'm like, okay, it's only my belief that the ego has power is literally giving it its power. So if it can be shifted so quickly, then how can I say that it has power over me? So that was just a little example that I had because it reminded me of sentence 2. But I think I do need clarification on the last sentence.
Okay, all right. So remember that belief is at the level of consciousness, and the Course teaches that consciousness is the first separation, the first split, because it's a decision to perceive rather than to know. So in that first split, the mind became a perceiver rather than a knower. Okay. So belief is still part of perception. That's why we have different beliefs. That's why some people can believe one thing and someone else can believe something else, because they're still individualized forms, their points of view. Okay. So truth as knowledge, which has nothing to do with the body's perception and senses, and is eternal, infinite, non-changing. Okay, that knowledge is beyond perception. It's beyond that first split, because the first split never happened. Okay, that's a belief in the ego. So what is beyond that level is knowledge that there is no separation, there is no ego. It's just truth. Okay. So so the Holy Spirit will teach you to perceive beyond your belief. So it will teach us to perceive, let's see. It will teach us to perceive truly, so that the mind reflects knowledge in its thoughts, so that there's thoughts of God that are true. And that's why the perception will be true. It will be in alignment with the reality of God. So that perception will not see separation. It will see equality. It will see sameness. And it will bypass all the differences of the body, of the social status, of all of that the world has made, and will simply recognize the life and spirit within all of life. And that's what it sees as oneness. Okay. So let's see. So that's a teaching of true perception, Holy Spirit guidance. And it comes so close to knowledge then God can take the last step from there. Okay. And so what it's saying is that the ego can be completely forgotten in any time, because it is a totally incredible belief. And once we recognize at how insane it is, okay, and once we look at it, and we've looked at it enough, and we begin to see some of the preposterous things it comes up with, okay, because it makes associations seem to be causal, and associations are not causal. But you can make up really good stories, okay, by imagining things that never happened, okay, but that you can assume, oh no, they must have happened because two things showed up at the same time. That's what an association is. Okay. So, so it's like saying, oh, so and so saw you with somebody's husband. Okay. And then they make an assumption, oh, well, what were you doing with them? What were you, are you having an affair? Are you, so their imagination takes over just because they saw, two people that were not husband and wife, who were not married. Do you see what I'm saying? They start making all these associations, like a soap opera, like a drama. So so that imagination can get so preposterous, okay, that even that our own mind can just say, okay, come on, I can't buy this. This is just too ridiculous. Okay. And that's actually happened to me in dreams sometimes where I see myself, hiking up this local park and then I see a crocodile in the creek there. And then I'm like, what? Wait a minute. That can't be true. And so there's actually a little bit of remembering, oh yeah, this is a dream. So you can actually kind of remember in your dream that it's a dream. So that's kind of what it's saying here, that it's possible for us to recognize that that belief is so unbelievable that we just say, no way, I'm not going to buy that. So that's what line says. The incredible cannot be understood because it is unbelievable. So that's why the Course says, don't try to understand the error. Okay, come on, it's nonsense. Okay, you look at the error only because you need to see that it's nonsense so that the Holy Spirit can, with the light of the Holy Spirit, it just vanishes. So number 5 says the meaninglessness of perception based on the unbelievable, based on the ego, is apparent. And the reason why it doesn't seem apparent is because we have taught ourselves to perceive upside down, so that the unbelievable is actually what seems normal now. Okay. Um, and it's a little bit like the story of the frog in the water, and you begin to turn up the heat and it just gets used to it and it just stays in there until it gets cooked. Um, so, but it may not be recognized as being beyond belief. Okay. So the unbelievable of the ego thought system is very clear to see if we want to see it, if we're not invested in it, and if we're not protecting it. Because if we're giving any value to it, we're going to overlook it and we're going to believe it, because that's what we do when we value something. We believe it, we give it belief. And therefore it may not be recognized as being beyond belief because it is made by belief. Okay, so we have to be able to go to, we have to be able to see with the Holy Spirit to recognize which beliefs are ego beliefs and which ones are thoughts of God. Because at the belief level, if we're identified with the belief in the ego and believe we are an ego or a body, we will not recognize that we made that self as a belief that is not true, because we're identified with it. So if we're at the same level of belief, if we are identified with any of our beliefs about what we think we are, we will be at the belief level and we will not be able to look above that belief level. We won't be able to recognize, okay, and take our mind, our perception beyond the belief level. Does that make sense? Let's see. Maybe I can
So
explain it another way.
are you saying that essentially the belief in the ego, which is just a belief, is making its own belief? So it's a belief made by a belief. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it plays off with the body. So for example, if I believe I'm the body, okay, I am believing in separation, because that's what a body is. It's a separate self apart from in other bodies. Okay. So if I believe I'm a body, I will fail to recognize that that's just a belief. I would say, of course I'm a body. No, it's not a belief. See, see, it's real. Okay. I can sense it, I can feel it, and all of that says that the body is real. So it's not just my belief, okay? It's what I am. Okay. So um so so we are not recognizing that being a body is just a belief in separation because we're identified with it. And therefore, we cannot recognize that we made it because we believe we are it. So it's a little bit like being identified with what I do, like, oh, well, tell me something about yourself. Who are you? Well, I'm an engineer, okay, or I'm a nurse, you know, um, and um, and you're saying, okay, well, okay, okay, well, that's not what you really are because that's your profession. That's what you do. Okay, so um, that's just the label that we give to that activity that we engage in, 40 hours a week or more. Um, and so the identification with the doing makes it as if we are not the ones, makes it seem as if we cannot recognize that that's not what we really are in truth. Because if someone said, well, I'm a nurse, I go, okay, but that's not really what you are. Well, no, that is what I am. That's what I do. Okay. I mean, they'll say, well, that's a fact. That's what I do. Okay. But are you your doing? Because if you are your doing, then there's the doer, and then there's the one that is doing the doing. So there's two, you see. And we don't see that. Well, actually, it might explain it further in the next paragraph. Why don't we just go to the next one?
Okay, the whole purpose of this course is to teach you that the ego is unbelievable and will forever be unbelievable. You who made the ego by believing the unbelievable cannot make this judgment alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we do it with the whole sonship?
We do it with the Holy Spirit, which is basically the recognition of the sonship. Yeah.
Okay. By accepting the atonement for yourself, you are deciding against the belief that you can be alone, thus dispelling the idea of separation and affirming your true identification with the whole kingdom as literally part of you. This identification is as beyond doubt as it is beyond belief. Your wholeness has no limits because being is infinity.
Okay. Okay. So this explains further, Sonia, because at the level of belief, there are separate beliefs. Okay. And so in order to see that, oh, okay, let's see, that my judgments are actually just beliefs. Okay. If I say, well, I'm a good mother, okay, and you're a bad mother, okay, I am giving value to those judgments and I'm believing them to be true. And uh, I will be very protective of those ideas because I'm making them. I'm making them up. I'm making that separation up. So, uh, so I am basically miscreating. I'm making up an ego for you, and I'm making up an ego for me as a good mother and a bad mother. Okay, those are self-images, okay, of a separate self. Um, so when I do that and believe in that, at the level of belief, I am identified with my belief. So I cannot see that I am the maker of that belief because I've lost that perspective by identifying with what I made as my belief. And that's why it says in number 3, let's see, no, yeah, 2, you who made the ego by believing the unbelievable cannot make this judgment alone. Let's see, you cannot, what was it, Connie, where it says that you cannot undo it by yourself?
It's number 2 where it says you cannot make this judgment alone. Is that what you're talking about?
Let's see, you who made the ego by believing cannot make this judgment alone. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I was I thought it was saying something else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so in other words, the Holy Spirit in our mind is the higher self that recognizes that we are not our individual beliefs, that we are not what we believe we are. Okay, we can believe anything that we want about what we think we are and what we think other people are, but that's not the truth of what we are. That's not how God created us. That's not what is our essential nature. And so, um, and so we need the higher perspective of the Holy Spirit, of the vision of oneness, to rise above the level of that split, which is where the beliefs are, to be able to let go of our beliefs about ourselves. Generally speaking, the beliefs we have about ourselves can be very, very deep because they can, they can come from way back. Actually, the unbelievable belief we brought in with us, or we wouldn't have been born, quote unquote, as a body. We wouldn't believe that we're actually here as a body if we didn't bring in that belief. And so we already come in with a belief in separation, and we are here to heal that belief in separation, which is beyond the level of belief. The healing comes from beyond the level of belief because it's a recognition that the belief level is still part of separation, and it's not the truth of what we are. So let's see. Yes, so in paragraph 7, the whole purpose of this course is to teach you that the ego is unbelievable and will forever be unbelievable. But you who made the ego by believing the unbelievable cannot make this judgment alone. So I actually did misinterpret it. It's just that the
Yeah.
wording is a little
Yeah.
strange. But what it's saying is that basically we need the guidance of the Holy Spirit to make the judgment that the ego belief is unbelievable and let it go.
Yeah, the wording is a bit convoluted there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what accepting the atonement is. So to accept the atonement is to decide against the belief that you can be alone, that we can be separate, that we can be what we believe we are. And let's see. And that affirms our true identification with the whole kingdom, with all of creation. So and this identification, which is the oneness of the kingdom, the oneness of creation, is as beyond doubt as it is beyond belief. So that actually is the healing of the split mind. because there's a recognition there that the separation never happened, so that the mind itself is not a perceiver. It is a knower. And so that's number 5, the recognition that we are whole. Your wholeness has no limits because being is infinity. So we are basically touching knowledge there because we've gone beyond the first split in the separation, beyond the level of belief. And ultimately that's where we that's the realization that the mind comes to when it recognizes that the ego belief is impossible. And to believe in it is to believe that the impossible is possible, which is a contradiction. And that's why we get so confused. Like it was saying up here somewhere. Yeah, with the conflict, all of that is confusion. Yeah, okay. All right, so anything with that? That's the unbelievable belief. So I guess we'll stop here. So thank you.